Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast. I have from Clarksville, Tennessee, the wonderful Brendalyn Carpenter Player. Welcome to the show, Brendalyn.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Belinda.
Thank you, and quite thrilled that you have opted to have a chat with me on a Sunday for you. It's Monday here for me, and we are so close to the holidays, it's not funny. So, yeah, I appreciate you taking some time. Maybe might be nice to have a bit of time because here we are, both present. We're in the past, I'm in the future, but we're being present right now. So it's always nice just to be able to sit and have a little chat. So let's do it. You're the
Yeah.
author and TEDx speaker and introvert advocate. This really, sparked my intrigue, I've got to say, when I was reading about you. Who helps quiet professionals thrive in visibility-driven workplaces. You're a retired US Army civilian public affairs director with 20 plus years of service. You're the founder of Brendalyn Player Communications and author of The Unapologetic Introvert. I really want to talk to you about this. And you have been living with cerebral palsy since childhood, which informs your work on self-acceptance, clarity, and authentic presence. And I'll just ask you a little bit pre-show about cerebral palsy without you going into all the detail, but you might want to explain a little bit to the audience as well of, what it is in case there's people that don't know that. Brendalyn, I might hand it over to you to give us a little bit about your journey, your story, how you came to start your company after being a US Army civilian, this introvert aspect. It all sounds like it's, yeah, all interconnected.
And there's a lot to unpack here in 30 minutes. So I'll try to be as concise as possible and take a few breaks so that you could ask some questions in
Go for it.
between. But let me go back to the beginning. I have cerebral palsy, and for those who don't know what it is, it's a neurological disorder, and it's actually the result of a stroke that I had in utero. I didn't know that I had a stroke. I grew up with parents in Chicago, Illinois, where they worked really hard, and we didn't have the kind of health insurance where we would go and get that kind of testing done. My dad, my family, I have three older brothers, three older sisters, and two younger brothers. They were more focused on making sure our day-to-day living we were okay, and there was a lot of health people to deal with health wise. So as long as I was functioning properly, it was all good. I was thriving. When I was 18, I went to the doctor and myself found a neurologist and found that I had suffered a stroke in utero. All that time between infancy and 18 years old, I just knew I was different. And for the audience, different for me is I have spasticity. It's called dystonia that impacts the right side. I have spasticity in the right side of my face and my arm,
Mm.
really my hand. I don't have any fine motor skills and on my right side. And I have kind of a gait when I walk. That's really the impact of it. But the profound impact of having cerebral palsy in childhood was when I went to school and discovered that I was different.
Yeah.
At home, I didn't feel different because I had my loving family around me. But in school, I found out that I didn't do everything like all of my classmates did. And I happened to overhear a conversation that my dad was having at home. And he had a visitor who had been to church. He goes to church a lot. He invited my dad to church and he said, "You should bring Brendalyn," that's me. I said, "You should bring her to our revival. There's an evangelist there and there's a prayer line. Put her in the prayer line." Well, I'm 9 years old. I don't know what a
A
prayer
prayer.
line is, but I
Yeah.
know what healing is. So I'm like, "Dad, take me to the prayer line." I go to the prayer line and the minister grabs my hand and does the prayers, and my fingers, they can stretch out, but they tighten back up. However, they don't understand that. So when they saw my fingers stretch out, everyone's praising and worshiping that I've got this healing. And I get home that night and my hand's back in the spastic position.
Mm.
I went through about 9 years of that experience with my father, repeatedly putting me in the prayer line And my 9-year-old mind could not understand what was happening. So I figured out for myself that God must have been saying no
Yeah.
to that petition. I internalized that as being unworthy
Mm,
and inadequate. And because I already had a temperament, I didn't know that my temperament being quiet, a quiet person was introversion. I didn't even know
no,
what that
yeah.
word was. I used my temperament as a safe space to hide my feelings of being unworthy and inadequate. And I carry that from childhood into adulthood. Didn't know that that was happening on the inside. Fast forward to my profession, I found a profession that suited my introversion, which was writing. I became an intern for a city newspaper. 2 years I interned there. And then after I graduated, I went for my interview because I figured, hey, this guy, my editor, he knows me. So this interview is going to be a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Sit in the interview, I'm going to be a beat reporter, and he says he's not going to hire me. And I'm thinking,
Why?
I don't, that is what I said. And he said, I don't think this is enough for you. I think you can do more. Well, I'm what? I'm a young lady at this time. I'm trying to find the space where I can be safe. I've already found out how to tuck away my feelings of inadequacy and introversion. And I found the job that allows me to do that. So I had everything lined up. I was angry because he did
Mm,
not let me move forward on the path that I created for myself without even wanting to peel back the layers and understand what he was talking about when he said he thought I could do more. I spent the year just applying for all kinds of jobs and ended up on an interview. It was a phone interview with the US Army Pentagon, talking to colonels and lieutenant colonels when I didn't even know what those terms meant. But because I already had a chip on my shoulder, I was being extremely authentic, which was rare for an introvert, and they hired me. I took on a role that had a piece of what I loved, which was internal communications,
yeah.
writing for a newspaper, and but it also had external communications, community relations, media relations, congressional relations, and those kinds of interaction took me well outside of my comfort
Comfort
zone.
zone. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty much how I ended up with moving from that introvert as a 9-year-old to a role that was highly visible and successful because of my introvert nature. I'm going to work really hard.
Mm,
I'm going to overperform and overproduce. And that's what I did. Fast forward 20 years into it, I realized that I was suppressing all those years, that uncomfortable feeling in that external communication space when I had to be highly visible. I was suppressing my feelings of discomfort in visible roles. I had not developed the soft skills to perform as an introvert. I wore a suit that didn't fit. I was trying to be like my counterparts the whole time
you must have
until
been
my
exhausted.
perfect, exactly. It was exhausting, but it was also physically impacting me. And I had a second stroke.
Oh,
Approximately 2 years ago, I'm in the hospital and the doctor's saying, you had a second stroke. And thankfully, I did not have any major impacts, just a droopy left eye, which you might notice really.
I
But it
can't
was an
notice it actually.
epiphany for me to stop living that kind of life, to take off the mask. I left the hospital with a different mindset, determined to discover what had happened that allowed me to bury my true feelings as an introvert in a lifestyle that didn't quite fit me. And I started down my path of self discovery, self awareness. I found my tribe in learning about the introvert community. I started with Introvert Dear, a website that most of you probably have seen before.
Never heard of
Jen
it.
Brannaman, she wrote a book about introversion. I read that book and I went on from that book to another book to another book. And the more I read, the more unlocked I became in terms of who I was as an introvert and how to thrive in a community that was highly visible. And then I started to write about that whole process. And that's where the book came from, The Unapologetic Introvert, from someone who felt inadequate, who felt like I needed to apologize and overperform because of my quiet nature, to someone who I called an empowered introvert.
Wow. What a story. Incredible. You must feel so just comfortable and proud of yourself in terms of just that ability. You called out authentic a few times, and but like you are really living your truly your whole authentic life, yourself now. And that's like
Yeah,
takes like years and years of like living the way you were living. Like that's why I was like, you must have been exhausted. And I always think about the mask, and I'm not sure if you do this as well, but I always think about the mask because I've done it before. Like I feel like I'm an extra intro. Like everyone would think I'm a complete and utter extrovert. But I need to be in my den at times and just like, chill. And people are like, do you ever rest? Do you ever just like sit still? And I'm like, yes. Like I have to just like, you have to like get the energy back. Um, but where I was going with this, I was just saying around like just living with what you were living with. And I always think about someone like a famous music person or someone who is constantly on the speaker circuit and they're you go out and you do your big like concert or your big presentation or whatever and the mask and they're on and they're performing and it's like this they're just like on and then you go back behind the scene like and they're a completely different person and I think when you've got that mask on constantly and I did it for quite a lot of years myself just because I was too scared to show my true vulnerable self. You,
right.
you realize how exhausting it is when you finally go, right, I am sick to death of this mask. I cannot wear it any longer.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think for me, and you asked how it feels, I feel so grateful because now I get to speak to many groups of people and in spaces where there are professionals. And I focus on professionals because I know that in the professional space, a lot of people struggle with this.
Yeah.
But when I talk with them, I get feedback. People come to me the same day, a week later, I get long emails from people saying, I didn't realize that that I wasn't the only one. I didn't realize that I'm an extrovert, but my wife is an introvert, and now I understand her better. I didn't realize when I made this particular decision that I could have made a different choice had I developed some additional skill sets. I didn't realize for 10 years that I had employees, if I had understood how an introvert works, I would have worked with them differently. I wouldn't have dismissed them and thought that in the meeting they were they were not engaged. They were just processing.
Yeah.
And we know this. I mean, as we learn introversion, we know it. But when you are in your profession and doing your work every day, you are not necessarily doing research about what introversion is. And what I focus on now is not the scientific aspect. I've studied that and I talk about that. But people in professional spaces need to know what the introvert experience looks like so that they can connect with what resonates with them. And I'm finding that that is more impactful while understanding the introvert to extrovert spectrum is really important. The more important thing is all of us, it's like our DNA and it's like our fingerprints. No one's introversion or extroversion is alike. We all experience it differently. But when we talk about the scope of introversion, and I talk about it from my experience or from those of the people who have graced me with their stories, it always seems to resonate with a larger audience.
Totally. Yeah. I'm listening to you as you're saying all of this, and it's taking me back to a fond memory of, in my previous role when I had a leadership team of 8. And I decided that we were doing an offsite for the year, and I thought about like getting everyone to do their 16 personality type test. and
Yes.
understanding the different personality types. Anyway, long story short, what happened was there was six, seven of us who came out as extroverts and one who came out as an introvert. And so then what I did is I looked at it all and I was like, okay, well, let's work through how we all communicate with each other, etc.
Mhm,
And there were so many learnings that came out of it because I won't name the person, but he was a complete introvert. And so what I
mhm,
realized was that other people in the leadership team used to get really annoyed with him because he could never answer things on the spot. He would get quite awkward. And what we realized, and so what we did is we unpacked it all. And then we worked through different forms of communications and way to communicate because he had this then ability to share. He needs to process things. He
mhm,
can't just
mhm.
answer things on the spot. And when an extrovert's going, just give us the answer, it's just like,
Yeah.
it was
Yes.
fascinating. And I use that more and more now in business and with teams to kind of go, we really got to understand each other. And like you say, no one person is the same. So, how do
Right.
we respectfully understand how each of us works, if you like, communicates to put together a system and a team that brings out the best in everybody? And I think this is exactly what you're talking about because communication is such a critical factor. And you said when you booked into the podcast, and I asked you what was one unique insight and or lived experience when it came to life, leadership, and or business. You said you help quiet professionals thrive in visibility-driven workplaces. And I'd love to unpack that a little bit, the visibility-driven workplaces in a second. But you said instead of conforming to the extrovert ideal, discover and leverage your natural strengths, your introvert advantage. When I began sharing how living with cerebral palsy since childhood shaped my experience as an introvert, my journey from self-acceptance to empowerment became a beacon for others. And it's fascinating, right? Because communication comes out for me a lot in this. But tell us a little bit about what you mean by this visibility driven workplace.
Yes, absolutely. So I can talk from my own perspective as a director of public affairs. I was by then, so my career progressed from an intern to finally in 20 years, I was promoted to be the director. So I had a team of my own. And a team means that I've got to take care of them as well as myself, and they will and make sure that they excel in their spaces. Well, my introvert self, I prefer to just go to work and get into my cubby, which is what our safe space, and do my emails and check my emails and do my work and go home. But I have a team. I have to interact with them. I must make sure that they are engaged and they know their tasks, and we work as as a body together, a collective body, which means that I've got to get away from my desk. I need to do more than just say hello. I need to go into their offices and interact with them and know their children and talk about their weekend and really actually listen and let them know that I'm connected with them, and both their personal and professional lives are a part of our landscape within our environment here. Once I understood that, and once I've moved myself forward and leaned into that, that active engagement took us to another level. Not only that, but that was just for my team. I was also a trusted advisor to Army leaders. So I had a seat at the table, which meant as the director, I needed to sit at the table and answer questions. Well, in my introvert space, I'd rather sit in the back or along the walls, but I need to be at the table. But it felt uncomfortable. Well, I learned how to take the seat at the table and have the conversations and express myself without feeling completely uncomfortable. Those soft skills, if I struggle with that, I know someone else is struggling with that as well. When I speak with my clients, they are in roles that they are trying to be more present, more impactful, and they are developing soft skills. So we talk about what are some of the things that make you uniquely valuable within your organization. And that's why I talk about being in visibility driven workplaces as an introvert, because we by nature downplay our qualities.
Mm.
I have one client who talks about he was elected to be in a certain role, and he has done training and does all kinds of things to prepare himself to be in that role, and still hasn't assessed or given himself the appreciation that he is prepared, that they selected you for a
It's
reason.
good
So
enough.
step, you are good enough. And
Yeah.
that's what I do in terms of walking clients through that whole process. And you will be surprised. Introverts do more of our thinking, our inward thinking. We are supporters by nature. We like to see the team succeed. We like to do our job, so we are okay with being in the background. However, if you are in a visibility driven workplace, we have to be comfortable with being
Mm,
out front
mm.
and helping a quiet person move forward more comfortably in their role. I feel like is the best place I can be.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. I've got quite a few more questions. Well, not quite a few. I'll keep it limited because it is Sunday for you. But like 2 years ago, when you had your second stroke, did you feel and where you are now, do you feel like where am I going with this? I guess what I'm trying to ask here is like, are you like for so many years you were like you said you were living like this life, and now all of a sudden, like, do you feel like this is like do you ever think, gosh, it took me so long, or like, do you think you were finally, it was just that you weren't ready and you were ready now and this was your calling, but you could only go through all these experiences to now be ready to do the work you're doing? Does that make sense what I'm asking here?
It makes perfect sense. And I will say all of that,
Yeah.
all of that. In that moment when I heard that diagnosis and the light bulb came on, I was really saying, what have I done to myself?
Mm,
What have I done to
mm,
myself for not being completely and authentically who I was? I almost lost it all.
yeah.
I almost I almost left this life and never fully experienced who I was completely. Never stood out front and been comfortable because I'm embarrassed of my hand and I feel unworthy. I spent 20 years of my career covering it up with a book, a piece of paper, or a tablet when I didn't have to. There was nothing different about me than it was for anyone else, but I needed to get there. And so I fully agree with you on what I learned prepared me for where I am now, because what I do in my role now is I go through a process with clients or groups that's not just about self-awareness or self-acceptance, but how do you reframe your narrative? How do you take what you are and rewrite your story? Because that was my career. I
Yeah.
spent 20 years telling the Army story, telling the soldiers and families story. Now I help individuals reframe their own stories. I couldn't do that if I didn't have that 20 years worth of experience. I wouldn't understand that if I did not know about how you can feel broken as a 9-year old and over time evolve to know that when I was in that prayer line, God never said no. I didn't know that then, but now I do. He never said no. I was perfectly designed for where I am right now.
So beautiful. You're perfectly designed for where you are right now. It's such a good quote. That can be in your next book. Yes, it is. It's incredible, isn't it? Because we're quite often so like the external world tells us there's something wrong with us, and we believe it, and we believe it, and we believe it, and we believe it, and then more and more we put that mask on and we bury ourselves even more so. You know, it was so fascinating for me though, pre-show. You said so. It's just this is just a conversation, and I said, yeah, this is a conversation, and you said, oh, that's good because like the scripting. And like, there's probably some aspects, there's no doubt, some aspects of being an introvert that would probably scare you or make you feel really uncomfortable. And like even that, when you were saying that, I was like, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I know even myself, like, and I purposely chose this podcast not to be scripted. I'm going to send you all the
Mhm,
questions through,
mhm.
prepare yourself, be
Yeah,
prepared,
yeah,
because I'm a
yeah,
massive
yeah.
believer in think before you speak, like in terms of
Yes.
no, sorry, speak before you think in terms of just let's just chat. Because I know as I know myself even like I really related to that and it was only because like for so many years I was always told rehearse, script, whenever you're doing a big presentation. I used to go to water. I was the world's worst speaker if I had to have a script and remember things verbatim, word for word, because I finally realized that it was that I wasn't able to be my authentic self. I was having to be this something in this piece of paper
Mhm,
that I was
mhm, mhm.
staring at, trying to be this thing that I just could never be because it was so contained.
Yeah, yeah,
And that must just, I mean, that's just one little like kind of experience that I think of. But like, from an introvert perspective, like it must like there must be times it would just be like, like why can't we all just be our authentic selves and why can't we
yeah.
all, Mm.
Well, let me tell you two different experiences. One was this podcast. You invited me to it several months ago. And
Did
when I
I?
read
Oh
about
gosh,
how
I
we
don't
were just
remember.
going to have, yes, several months ago. And I thought about it and I saw that it was unscripted and it's no prep and there's no, pre-recording, all of that. And I thought, oh, I don't know. I don't know. This is me pushing myself out of my comfort zone. However, as the unapologetic introvert that I am, I I stand on my word, and I have been doing this over the past several years so that I can show my clients that it can be done.
Yeah.
And so after several months of thinking and thinking, I went ahead and pushed the button on a date. I just pushed the button and I did not allow myself to over prepare. I trusted my instincts to say, you have everything you need to do what is required of you. And I will tell you that that was my mantra for 2 years as I was transitioning out of federal service and building this business. It was something that I said every morning. I have everything that I need to do what is required of me. So that's what I did to prepare for this particular session that we're having, the conversation. And I had to remind myself, this is a conversation.
Yeah.
So don't think about all of the other elements that are related to our conversation today. I just want to have an authentic interaction with you. The other side of that was the TED Talk.
Mm.
The TED Talk was one of the first things that I did when I was writing my book. This is I had to write the talk. I had a coach. I had to practice in front of a coach, and I had to memorize 18 minutes of a conversation and deliver it in front of I'm going to say national audience because it's available nationally now, but there was an audience seated as well, a live audience, something I've never done before as an introvert. It took a completely different level of preparation, but it took the same amount of courage to do that as it did to do this. Once you get your reps in, you develop a sense of confidence that yes, I can be an introvert. It's not either or, it's both and. I can be an introvert and I can be very visible and comfortable in my skin.
Yeah, because you're incredible. Like you're absolutely incredible, amazing. Like the thought of doing a TED Talk for me, as much as I'd love to do one day, like the whole thought of like having to rehearse and do 18 minutes, that actually gives me anxiety just thinking about that.
Totally get
But
it.
like, but you're living proof that it's possible. It's and the fact that you're an advocate for introverts and your visibility in the workplace, I absolutely love it. I've got two final questions for you, and I'll let you get back to the rest of your Sunday evening. What are you seeing? Do you think there's just as many introverts as there are extroverts in this world? Like, I mean, that's a really big question. I know that, but like, or like, I'm trying to understand. Is there a stat? I know you don't focus on the science component of it, but like in the workforce, for example, are there more? I
Yes.
guess maybe this is the question. Are there more extrovert as leaders, or are they more, or is it a mix of both? Like that, a lot of introverts put their mask on to be that like leader. Like what are you seeing?
statistically, now I do study the science of it for my own awareness, and it's
Yeah.
and so that I can get deep
Yeah.
with my clients and with my
Yeah.
organizations that I support. Statistically, we're about half and half, but I will say that in organizationally, because extroverts tend to be more visible, that extroverted leaders are selected
Yeah.
more
Okay.
often than introverts. However, the workplace is full of introverts in various spaces, and they are in more visible roles as they learn to become more self-aware about their introversion. There's also that space in between. The spectrum of introversion flows, um, and no one is a perfect introvert, is fully introverted, and no one is fully extroverted. We all flow along the spectrum. I happen to know that I leaned heavily into introversion, but there is a middle ground that we'll call an ambivert. They use a lot of different terms
Yeah.
scientifically. The new researchers call it introverted extrovert, extroverted introvert, omnivert. There's so many terms in between, but for simplification, I'll just call it ambivert. In that space, statistically, they say that the ambiverts are more adaptable and they are better salespeople as well because they can flow in between. They can regulate and adapt to an extrovert environment when they need to, and as well as an introvert environment. And they are less apologetic about being an introvert or
Mm.
needing to go back and recharge. They set their times and they build a system and environment around their needs, something that heavily engaged introverts have to build that skill set. And extroverts are all over it all the
Yeah.
time, you know.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it? Fascinating. And then what's next for your business? What's next for you? Like you said, you're having a fast start into 2026. Like what's it feels like I love your energy. I love your vibe. You're 2 years into this, mission and the impact and the positive change you want to make in the world. It feels like
Yeah.
you're just getting started, and you've got
I feel like it.
yeah.
Yeah. I am so excited. I'm 2 years of just doing the foundational work. And I mean, writing the book, launching the book. And now I've spent the last year doing book talks and then speaking engagements and receiving. And it's not about me, I receive feedback so that I can learn what works for our quiet professionals. What are their needs? I'm kicking off 2026 with a webinar series. The webinar is 5 moves for the 5 power moves of quiet leaders. I'm going to do a 3-part series to talk about, actually, I'm going to do 6, but that I'm not going to tell the attendees. It's already on Eventbrite. If you want to look it up. It's called 5 Power Moves of Quiet Leaders. It kicks off January 7th, 10th, and 21st. And then after that, we'll move forward into some other opportunities to engage. I'd love to do some workshops, and I'm so excited. I received my local certification for to contract with the state of Tennessee. So I will be contracting in professional spaces in 2026.
Well done. Incredible. You're an amazing woman, Brendalyn. I love
Thank
everything
you.
that you're doing. Tell me, what would be one piece of advice, words of wisdom you would share with anyone who is not feeling visible in terms of they know that they're an introvert, but they'd like to be more visible. They just don't know how to.
I would say have courage.
Mm,
Have courage to step into your authenticity. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there, whether it's asking one question, whether it's making one interaction, whether it's talking to one individual that you may or may not have talked to, whether it's accepting that particular offer that you've been thinking about for a month, like I thought about this conversation with you. Lean into your authentic self a little stronger, and it takes courage to do it. But once you do it that one time, that second and third and fourth time, you're going to build up a muscle
mm.
and you're going to start to know what it feels like to be empowered.
So gorgeous. I love it. Thank you so much. How do we find out more about you? Where do we find out? Where do we get your book from? Yeah,
My book is available at on Amazon, and it's also available on my website, unapologeticintrovert.com. If you purchase it from the website, I will send it to you directly. Unapologeticintrovert.com. You can find me on Eventbrite for the 5 Power Moves of Quiet Leaders, the 3-part series,
amazing. And we can find you
starting
on,
January 7th.
thank you. And we can find you on LinkedIn also. Can we find you on
I
LinkedIn?
am available on LinkedIn, and all of that information will be posted on there over the weekend.
Amazing. Thanks, Brendalyn. It's a 1 year next year, the year of the horse, like momentum, everything's happening. So wishing you utmost success and continuing to, champion the introverts. And I love everything that you're doing. And I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And wishing you a wonderful end to the year and happy holidays.
Oh, happy holidays. It was so nice to conversate with you today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brendalyn. Take care.